Welcome back to the Snowpoint Cast. Today we're taking a look at a deck from the Primal Clash to Guardians Rising format, Drampa Garb. Really strong deck, probably one of the best at the beginning of the format. So let's get right into it. So starting off with 4 Trubbish. Did you just play the Acid Spray Trubbish because it's the better one? 70 HP, 1 Psychic Acid Spray does 10. Flip a coin of heads, discard an energy attached to the opponent's active Pokemon. So this could be useful in a variety of situations, particularly against other Garbodor. I mean, it's obviously good against anything, right? If you can get an energy discard, it's really good, but particularly against other Drampas and other Garbodors, because you prevent them from killing you next turn. Drampa can just go attach DCE and then they berserk for 80 and then you die, or Trashalanche Garbodor, they can go evolve into Garbodor, double Colorless energy, and then acid spray you for 70 and kill you that way. So being able to discard the energy there can kind of swing the momentum. Really good to keep in note. I was playing 3 Trashalanche Garbodor. So Trashalanche Garb is just such a good card. It dominated the format ever since it got printed. So 120 HP, Trashalanche for 1 Psychic does 20 times the amount of item cards in your opponent's discard pile. You know, really punishing if your opponent isn't being very aware of how many items they have in their discard and isn't keeping track of what numbers they need to have in there to not get 1-shot or 2-shot kind of thing. And then Acid Spray actually is useful attack in some situations as well. Like I was saying, early game you can just kill a Trubbish with it, which is nice if they don't have any items in their discard. But also Acid Spray Choice Band, yeah, not Belt, I keep saying Belt lately, kills a Espeon GX, so kind of nice in that matchup for sure. I played in this format in Seattle Regionals, and I played Finnegan Lynch, and we actually played that exact matchup, and he had Espeon, and the Acid Spray Choice Band was really, really impactful in that matchup. I was playing 1 Garbotoxin Garbodor, so 100 HP, Psychic type. Garbotoxin is the reason to play it. So if you have a tool attached to this Garbodor, all Pokemon in play have no ability. So it shuts off everything. Unfortunately, you play Tapu Lele, so it does shut off your own Tapu Lele, but it's worth it, especially against other decks who rely even more on abilities. I mean, every deck plays Tapu Lele pretty much, so being able to shut off other decks that rely on more important stuff like Greninja is really important to play a 1-of this guy. Okay, so we're also playing 4 Tapu Lele GX. So just to be consistent, and also because Tapu Lele is such a good attacker. So 170 HP, Psychic type. For double Colorless energy, or Wonder Tag first, when you bench Tapu Lele, search your deck for a supporter card, put it in your hand, and then for double Colorless energy, it does 20 times the amount of energy attached to this Pokemon and the defending Pokemon. So kind of good if your opponent has a really big attacker in the active, like 2 or 3 energy, you can start swinging for some real damage, especially with a Choice Band. And the nice part is your single energy, so you can go up, swing with a DCE, retreat, like take a hit and then retreat to something else, and then hopefully not get KO'd for 2 prizes. So kind of nice there to be able to attack for pretty big damage for a single energy card there. And then Tapu Cure, I don't know exactly what Tapu Cure says because all these Tapu Leles are in Japanese, and it's that's just telling to how non-impactful the GX attack is. I don't think I've ever used Tapu Cure GX. I think it's just fully heal 2 of your bench Pokemon, if I'm mistaken. I'll put it on screen so you guys will know exactly what it does. But it's really uncommon, and you're not going to be using it that often at all. Big Wheel GX is usually the GX attack you're going to be using. Speaking of, you're playing 3 Drampa GX, one of your main attackers in the deck. So 180 HP, Righteous Edge for 1 Colorless, does 20, and then discard a special energy card attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. So same kind of thing with the Trubbish, where, you know, if your opponent is playing Drampa Garb, if you're playing Drampa Garb Mirror, I think in Seattle, the top 32 was like 20 Drampa Garbs or something insane. So Mirror was a really big deal. And if they're not able to attach a basic energy turn 1, they have to put a special energy on. Then you can Righteous Edge them and then take the momentum back. You go like they're getting a first attach off, but you deny them that attach and also put damage on them to hopefully be able to kill with Berserk next turn. Especially if it's like a Tapu Lele or something, you can hit them for 20 and then buck 50. You don't even need a Choice Band with a Drampa if you have a damage on one of your bench Pokemon. Okay, so Berserk, 3 Colorless, 80, and then if your bench Pokemon has any damage counters on them, it does 70 more damage, so 150 base with the Choice Band, does 180, kills other Drampas, and then you play, I think you play Kukui, yeah, you play Kukui and stuff, so you can hit 200 for Lycanroc GX and stuff like that. And then Big Wheel GX, not an attack you're going to be using super often, but really good in a pinch as well. So Big Wheel, shuffle your hand in your deck, then draw 10 cards. I definitely did use this at Seattle Regionals just because it's there are situations where you start a lone Drampa and your hand's really not that good, and you'd rather just Big Wheel. And if your opponent doesn't have an end, you get to keep a massive hand, and even if they do have an end, at least you get a hand refresh. Okay, so getting into the trainer cards, you're playing 4 Ultra Ball. Ultra Ball, discard 2 cards from your hand, search your deck for Pokemon, so just really staple, solid Pokemon search that it's at least a couple of in every deck in this format because it's so consistent. They're also playing 4 VS Seeker, so this is kind of a late game supporter consistency card. VS Seeker says, put a supporter card from your discard pile into your hand, so just being able to take back your tech supporters. One of your main draw supporters is Professor Sycamore, so being able to discard your hand, draw 7 is amazing. The downside of that is you have to discard your hand, but with VS Seeker, it just means that the later into your game that you get, as you've used more Sycamores and Ultra Balled more stuff away, the more supporter options that you have, and you do have some tech supporters that we're going to get into in just a sec that are really impactful in some matchups. Okay, so you're also playing 4 Floatstone. So Floatstone, it's a tool card. The Pokemon this card is attached to has no retreat, so mostly useful on Garbodor. You can put it on a Drampa or a Lele, but usually you're going to want a Choice Band on those guys to be doing more damage. But really particularly good on a Garbotoxin Garbodor because he does have a fat 3 retreat, and you really don't want to get stalled out if you have a Choice Band on there. There are situations where you want to put a Choice Band on to guarantee the lock, but most of the time you're going to want to Floatstone on there just because it keeps you... And also having a pivot option, you know, if your Garbodor goes down and you need to find other cards and you might not hit like off of a Sycamore or an N, then being able to put something in the active with a Floatstone just to say, hey, like if I whiff this turn, at least I can retreat to whatever I would like to instead of putting a Trubbish up and then having nothing happen and having it die if I whiff. Okay, so you're also playing 4 Choice Band, so another really solid tool. So Choice Band, the attacks of this Pokemon, the Pokemon this card is attached to do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon GX and active Pokemon EX. Just getting that damage buff, like I said, with Drampa is really impactful. The 180 is, I mean, he's got 180 HP. You kill Tapu Lele, you kill Drampa, you kill pretty much any basic GX Pokemon. There are some that have 190, which is, you play Kukui to get over that. But just being able to have the damage buff on there, especially with the Righteous Edge. Your Righteous Edge for 50 can be really, really big, especially if you don't really have those damage counters early. You can go Righteous Edge for 50, and then Berserk for 80. If the game happens to be that slow, it's rarely that slow in this format, but if it does, you can kind of chip damage like that. And also Choice Band on Garbotoxin Garbodor. It's just good in a lot of situations, right? Like let's say your opponent has 7 items in the discard and they're like, okay, I'm attacking with this Tapu Lele. There's no way that he's able to kill me unless he has a Choice Band, or even if they have like 6, and then you're like, okay, now I'll hit Choice Band and Kukui and then be able to hit one-shot this Tapu Lele GX out of nowhere. So kind of a nice damage mod there that the deck really needs. Just playing 1 full Field Blower. So this has two purposes in this deck, rather. So the first purpose is obviously to discard tools. You know, tools are item cards, so when they hit your opponent's discard, Trashalanche does that much more damage. So being able to buff your Trashalanche damage is really awesome, but also being able to gain access back to abilities against other Garbodors. There are situations where you really need to hit a supporter card, and so being able to bench a Tapu Lele and find a supporter card in certain situations is really solid. So being able to get that back, it's mainly for the damage buff, but also being able to discard your opponent's tools and gain abilities back is another clutch use for Field Blower. Also playing a Super Rod, just a Pokemon recovery card. So shuffle 3 in any combination of basic energy cards and Pokemon from your discard pile into your deck. So just gets back a 1/1 Garbodor line and a basic energy, or depending on if you need it, you know, you can get a 1 of Garbotoxin Garbodor and a Drampa, depending on what your prizes are. Just kind of a recovery card, and you play a Rescue Stretcher as well, kind of another solid recovery card. So Rescue Stretcher says choose 1, put a Pokemon from your discard pile in your hand, or shuffle 3 Pokemon from your discard pile into your deck. So just another Pokemon recovery, especially useful later into the game when you're swinging with Garbodor's Trashalanche Mirror. You're just going to be killing other Garbodors all the time, so you go kill, kill, kill. And when you have a Rescue Stretcher, being able to say, hey, I already have a Psychic Energy in my hand. Now I'm just going to take this Garbodor back and automatically be able to attack you for knockout this turn. Because if you ever whiff, you just lose the mirror. So really good at keeping your attackers consistent there. Okay, so also playing 4N, starting to get into the supporter cards. So you're playing 4N. Both players shuffle their hands to their decks and then draw for their remaining prize cards. So a really good draw early. And I mean, shuffle draw 6, shuffle draw 5, even if you've taken a prize, is really solid. And then into the late game, it's actually one of the best, I think, combos in this game in Pokemon. Not ever, but it's one of the really, really strong ones that's existed. So Drampa GX, Garbodor, and being able to shut off your opponent's abilities so they don't have access to Tapu Lele, they don't have access to like draw abilities, and then you also disrupt them. So if they're down to 1 or 2 prizes, you put them to 1 or 2 cards in hand. And then with Righteous Edge, being able to either take the special energy off their active to say, hey, now you need to hit special energy if you want to attack, or just to kill and knock out, and then say, hey, now I'm in a position where I'm probably going to take another prize or 2 prizes next turn, and you just put an insane amount of pressure on your opponent to say, hey, you have to draw out of this end like right now, or your top deck has to be a Professor Sycamore, or I'm probably just going to win the game. So really, really awesome card in the deck, and that's why you play 4. With 4 VS Seeker, there's opportunities to use N many, many times throughout a match. I was playing 4 Professor Sycamore, like I was saying, just a staple draw supporter in this format. Discard your hand, draw 7 cards. Really good. And then also with VS Seeker, just keeps your late game supporters a little more consistent. To Lysandre, switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon with his or her active Pokemon. So just being able to choose whatever you'd like on your opponent's board, especially like this is great for bringing up Lele's. Almost every deck in the format plays a Tapu Lele GX as a support Pokemon because it's so good. So being able to go Drampa GX, Choice Band, Kill is really, really nice. And it just keeps your prize trading really well. That's one of the benefits of this deck is you just get to swing for 2 energy for a one-shot on GX Pokemon sometimes. And being able to boss GX Pokemon active is an important part of that. Okay, get into some of the one-up supporters. You're playing one-up Brigette or Brigette. So search your deck for 1 basic Pokemon EX or 3 basic Pokemon and put them onto your bench. So you don't play EX Pokemon, and this card was printed before GX Pokemon were a thing. So you get a Drampa, usually 2 Trubbish, sometimes even 3 Trubbish in the Garbodor mirror. But if you haven't found a Drampa, the nice part is it's a GX Pokemon, so it kind of evades that rule of being an EX. You can get a Drampa and 2 Trubbish, or a Lele if you really need it to, just to be able to attack with it. So kind of a good setup card there. Teammates, another amazing card in this deck. I actually didn't play this card in Seattle, but I really wish that I did because it's so good. So you can only play this card if one of your Pokemon was knocked out during your opponent's last turn. Search your deck for up to 2 cards and put them into your hand. Shuffle your deck afterwards. So, you know, if you have early game Brigette, then you get multiple Trubbish. The only thing you're looking for once you're streaming KOs against other Garbodor decks, or even just any deck that's streaming KOs back against you and you're killing them, is an energy and a Garbodor. So being able to teammates and then going teammates, I get KO'd, teammates, energy, Garbodor, or rescue stretcher, energy, or whatever, right? Like just being able to hit the parts that you need, especially searchable is so good. And with VS Seeker, you get to use this card potentially multiple times. So I think it's just too good of a card not to play. It's an amazing card. You're also playing one of Professor Kukui. Draw 2 cards during this turn. Your opponent's or your Pokemon's attacks do 20 damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So like I was saying before, the damage buff with that can be really relevant for 200 HP Pokemon like Espeon or Lycanroc GX, because Drampa caps at 180, but Kukui lets you kind of reach over that cap and also kill stuff like Lapras GX. So there's a bunch of Pokemon that aren't within your regular knockout HP range, and Kukui lets you push over the top and get there if you need to. I was playing one Hex Maniac. So this card's actually banned, but not in this format, so you play it. So until the end of your opponent's next turn, each Pokemon in play in each player's hand and in each player's discard pile has no ability. So just a really insane card. If your opponent is able to kill your Garbodor somehow with the Lysandre or whatever, being able to still remain locked on abilities, like they kill you and then it's your turn. If you can find a Hex Maniac and then find a Trubbish and get your Garbodor back next turn with a Ball Search and a Super Rod or a Rescue Stretcher or whatever, it just means you get to maintain that ability lock, which can be really, really important against stuff like Greninja Break, especially because they just get to go way too crazy on your board. Even if you give them abilities for one turn, it's usually just too much. So being able to keep that ability lock is really, really strong. Okay, getting into the energy cards here. Starting off with 4 double colorless energy. It's so good on a Drampa or a Tapu Lele or a Garbodor. It's good on all these different cards in different situations. So you play 4 of them just because they're 2 energy. Now, but honestly, one of the most broken energy Pokemon's printed because it's just 2 energy in 1. It's really good. We're also playing 4 Rainbow Energy. So Rainbow Energy serves 2 purposes. I mean, obviously provides a psychic energy, but also when you attach Rainbow Energy to one of your Pokemon, you put a damage counter on that Pokemon. So that's really nice for Drampa. It means that late game, you're not, or mid to late game rather, you're not just relying on your opponent to hit you for a not one shot in order to get your damage buff from Berserk. You can just, if you're a little bit ahead on attaches, like on your turn 3 particularly, when your Drampa is already charged up, you can just put a Rainbow on something on the bench, and then it has a damage counter, and then Berserk is doing that additional damage. So really clutch to be able to buff your damage with Rainbow Energy there. And you're also playing 4 basic Psychic just because, you know, other Drampa decks, if you only play Special Energy, they'll just Righteous Edge you, and that's a really bad time. And also being able to get it back with Super Rod and stuff like that. It's just a little bit more consistent, and this is colorless, and this is Psychic, so you may as well just play Psychic Energy at that point. Okay, well, this has been Drampa Garb for the Primal Clash to Guardians Rising format. If you have any questions about the deck, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to get to them. And as always, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.